One of the most entitled people in Canada is a former journalist and lobbyist named Tom Clark. He was famous for being on TV for a long time. I think his highlight of his journalistic career was when he was in a little plane. Tom Clark's a pilot, and he had this shtick. It was actually quite clever. He would go up in a little plane as the pilot, and he would have his interviewee subject with him, and he would ask him questions. And what are you going to do? The only way out of that interview is if you bail out with a parachute. So he sort of trapped his guests in the plane, which is a great way to extract some answers from them on tough questions. But of course, Tom Clark is smarter than to ask politicians tough questions. Here's the highlight of Tom Clark's long journalistic career. When he had Trudeau to himself, and Trudeau had nowhere to run, he could have asked him anything. Here's what he chose to ask.
So I guess the first thing I should ask you is, are you feeling lucky? I mean, the entire country wants to know. What shampoo do you use?
What a disappointing answer this is going to be. Whatever happens to be hanging around at the time.
You know, I don't know what's worse about that, the stupid question or the very earnest, extended answer by Trudeau on what shampoo he uses. I've never forgotten that interview, and apparently neither did Justin Trudeau, who rewarded Tom Clark with you've heard the phrase, a thankless task. Well, this was a taskless thanks. Tom Clark was sent to New York City, one of the finest ambassadorial diplomatic postings in the world, to be our consul general there. But alas, he had to live in that New York style. And he demanded a $9 million apartment because he can't just stay in some hovel. And really, Trudeau lives like a Kardashian. Why shouldn't Tom Clark? Well, that caused a bit of a scandal. Here's Tom Clark lying about it in Parliament.
Mr. Clark, you've purchased property in the past, probably numerous times, with the assistance of real estate agents. They do their best to sell property to you, to highlight all the features of the property to you. Are you suggesting to Canadians that when you toured this Billionaires Row condominium that's right in front of Central Park, that they were completely muted and you simply walked around aimlessly looking at all the features, not asking any questions, and them not highlighting certain features to you? Is that what you want Canadians to believe? Yes or no, Mr. Clark?
Oh, yes.
Wow. Wow. You have found the most inept real estate agent in the entire world.
Well, if that doesn't get your blood boiling, this will. Our friends at the Taxpayers Federation, inspired by Tom Clark's sheer chutzpah, filed an access to information request with the government about what other excessive real estate, foreign affairs, or now it's called global affairs, Canada has around the world. And the numbers you were about to hear make Tom Clark look like a peasant. I am joined now by the boss of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, our friend Franco Terrazzano, with a lot more. I have to tell you, Tom Clark, it was so obviously a reward, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. Can I read the first couple of sentences of your press release? And then I want you just to let her rip, Franco, okay?
Please, go.
Official residences in other countries, $38 million. Properties in Afghanistan, abandoned to the Taliban, $41 million. Vacant land in Senegal, $12.5 million. A chancery, I have to look that word up. I forgot what that is, but I'm guessing it's a building. In Ukraine, $10.2 million. These are some of the holdings in Global Affairs Canada's real estate portfolio, which has cost taxpayers $186 million in the past 10 years alone. Franco, tell us the bad news.
Well, I mean, that is the bad news, but of course it always gets worse, right? That's just Global Affairs Canada spending on fancy digs around the world in the last 10 years. I mean, in total, Global Affairs Canada has 400 properties in more than 700 countries, and the price tag there is like $750 million. But like you read some of the top ones, there's also quote unquote staff quarters in London costing $58 million. Now, look, the government's going to come back and try to defend this, saying, oh, well, you need to have diplomats all over the world. But like, come on, right? Just because this is what the government has done for so long to taxpayers, it doesn't mean that this is a good thing. And like, why do we have to pay to have all these bureaucratic offices and all these fancy people living off the taxpayer dime all around the world? Like, I have never heard a case from the government explaining why taxpayers are on the hook for tens of millions of dollars for these fancy properties and buildings and official residences all across the world. Now, the total $38 million for official residences in other countries. Let me give you some other examples. In New Zealand, $2.4 million for official residence there. Barbados, $3.8 million for official residences in Barbados.
How?
Trinidad and Tobago, $2.5 million for official residences there, Ezra.
You know, there's, of all these numbers here, the one that I find the craziest is Senegal. 12.5 million. I don't know if you know where Senegal is. If I'm not mistaken, it's on the west of Africa. It's sort of like there's two countries. There's one that looks like a hamburger bun and one that looks like the hamburger, Senegal and Gambia. It is one of the poorest countries in the world. And perhaps we need an ambassador there. I know other countries sometimes co-locate. For example, you might have the British embassy and the Canadians could rent an office for them, or we could do a deal where the Brits do our diplomacy. Like, there is no rule that Canada needs to have an embassy in all 200 of the world's countries, including teeny tiny countries like Nauru, population a few thousand. But to spend $12.5 million in Senegal, what are they buying? What
on vacant land?
What are they
vacant land?
What is that? What's with the vacant land? What are they planning in Senegal? I'm not against the Senegalese people. I have no beef with them. I just don't know how you spend $12.5 million in Senegal, and you're saying it's vacant land. There's not even anything on it. Like, what's that about? Did they give you any details on what the heck they're doing?
No, I mean, look, we're going to keep diving into more details on this story, right? This was the first access to information request. And the reason we even launched this, right, to your point, all this scandal over the $9 million luxury condo purchased in Billionaires Row in New York for Counsel General Tom Clark. I mean, when we heard this story broke, we knew like this couldn't be the only time that Global Affairs Canada is buying fancy new digs around the world. And that's why we have filed this access to information request to see, well, like, how is Global Affairs Canada spending our money around the world on all these different properties? Like, Ezra, I mean, this is a democracy. Canadians are supposed to have an understanding of how the federal government is spending our money. But I can guarantee you, outside of hundreds of bureaucrats in Ottawa, I guarantee you nobody knows about this type of spending. And you know, you kind of mentioned like we have to have these diplomatic presences all around the world. Well, you know, the question is like, just because this is how government has been done for so long, does that really mean that this is the best way to have government? Like, what value are these living high on the hog bureaucrats really providing for taxpayers? Yeah. Because we know when you get a diplomatic posting around the world, you're getting a huge taxpayer funded salary. You get to live the good life, other types of expenses, big time staff. But like, just because this is how government has been going on for so long, it doesn't mean that this is what should happen going forward. So like, look, like what value, if any, is all this spending on lavish property around the world providing to taxpayers? And if the government can't make a case for it, then the government should be selling off these properties to try to recoup some of the money back to taxpayers.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.